Yes, it's like what's them like.
That's
We kind of going off, but it's fine.
But yeah,
It's fine. It's the podcast. It's our
but
podcast.
a lot of
Yeah.
people do this for depression, though. I think a lot of people get started on the spiritual journey because of depression.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what you were saying, and it was like, I was telling my sister as well, because she also deals with her bouts of depression as well. I was saying like, I think, and it's not to say like, woohoo, we are special, whatever, but when it comes to creative people, I feel creative people deal with depression on another level compared to everybody else. And here's my thing, my sense or sentiment behind it is that when you have people going to 9 to 5, that 9 to 5 is keeping them so busy that they totally like kind of forget about it. Like you mentioned, hip hop, the depression. I'm busy with this thing here at the moment, so you know what? Depression can take a side for the moment, but it becomes hard for creatives when like the very thing that you're wanting to do,
dude.
and now you maybe can't do it, or it's not coming out the way you want to. Your expression is being like as being held, or
Yeah.
whatever. And because of that, now you don't have a 9 to 5 to run away to take yourself away from the depression. You are literally in this thing that you love doing. It is you. It's become you. It's consumed you. But now the depression comes to light as well. And I'm not saying that every creative person, that's the reason why they turn to alcohol or to drugs or to any type of vice. But if they do, and that's the reason, well, then it's a damn good reason why they're doing it. You know,
For me, that
because
was the reason. Yeah.
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 But yeah, what I wanted to actually say was on the demon thing, with the people in Peru that you said they will encounter a demon, and then coming back to when you mentioned about the cosmos, or the barrier between Earth and the cosmos being so thin, at 2 quarter past 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That happened to me once. Um, I was busy with something. Actually, to sketch the scenario, myself and my like we in bed already, she's sleeping, putting the we only had one child at that time, putting Zion to sleep, and I fall asleep as well. But I was working. The PC is like basically opposite the bed.
The initials of your son were Zen, right?
Yes.
Okay, I remember.
Zion Egypt. Surname
Oh,
is Nomdi, so Zion Egypt Nomdi Zedin.
Okay,
Yeah, he's my first one.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into that one. So then the PC is opposite the bed, and obviously I'm laying like facing the PC. So the monitor goes off, and it's just this blue light of the monitor that's on. But I was working on something, and then the PC went to sleep while I was putting Zion to sleep. So then I move him to his bed, and I carry on working. So this is like about like 2 o'clock and whatever. I finally get to bed after finishing working, finished working on whatever I was doing, and I fall asleep, but I somewhat fall into this dream state, and the whole bedroom is like this blue light of the monitor, because for some reason I probably left the PC on, or I probably I'll put it off, whatever. But the whole the bedroom is dark, but it's this blue hue that's like navy-ish, darkish blue, and I turn over to my wife and I'm like, Karincha, and like she's not waking up. And I'm laying on my back and I look up again, and this thing that looks like a demon is over me. But now at that time, I was listening to another podcast where they speak about spirituality and more the left hand path, or the left hand side of things. So that's why I asked about the light and dark thing.
What's the
Because-
left hand side?
Okay, so basically, why they call it the left hand path is like if the norm is being right handed, so then that would be your religious folk, your spirituality, where the people that are on a spiritual um, um, vibe, but they're more on a light side. So they're the ones
Okay.
who would say like dark is bad. They will still put duality to their spiritualism. So it was like, okay, I'm doing light.
Yeah.
I'm not with the dark, because the dark is like, oh, no. The same thing that you explained.
Yeah.
The left hand path is the ones that are going against the norm. So it's like if you into Egyptian mythology, right hand will be your Osiris and all of those deities, and the left hand will be Set.
Okay.
So it would be in Hinduism, it would be Shiva, which would be your right hand, your left hand, and the right hand would be whatever is the light deities. And their whole thing is that like we all have traumas that we deal with. Those traumas get stored in that dark side of things. We don't pay it attention, and that then consumes who we become. So when we have when there's certain things that's not working on a physical level, it's because we're not looking at the very things that were traumatic growing
That
up.
are driving us.
Yeah. So the left hand path is basically looking at that side of things, sorting that things out, so that you then can get to a
Okay.
better point. But then what they basically told me, and that's why I didn't really panic at that moment. Not what they told me, but what they were saying in their podcast, was they always like drove this home, was that when you do encounter that, don't get fearful, because that image will turn into something way, like, for lack of a better term, an angel, so to say, because that is basically your trauma, your ego trying to not let you astral project or not allow you to do certain things, because the ego is very much attached to this paradigm. And now coming to the point that you made earlier on about like waking up, that's why I said, like, just remind me about that. You woke up and you told your girlfriend, like, look, I'm just gonna go somewhere quickly. So then I did panic a little bit. So I forced myself to wake up because my wife is not hearing me, like, what's happening? So I wake up and I realize, okay, it was a dream. I go back to sleep and I continued again.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, what's going on now? And then that's when I finally woke up, and then it stopped.
Okay.
But that was interesting. That I thought, like, okay, this was like a once-off thing, whatever, to hear from somebody else saying that, like, you know what, they actually told me, you can tell your girlfriend that you're going somewhere and this will continue. That's amazing.
And it continued with you too after you tried
Yeah,
telling your wife. That's
it
amazing.
continued. Well, once I woke up, yeah,
Yeah.
the first time.
It's interesting.
So I want to touch on this. So remember we had a conversation where I said I wanted to, like, psilocybin for me is, I think a lot of people need it in their lives, but it is obviously an illegal substance. And we just have to mention that we're not promoting anything like that.
Yeah, I just want to say something as well. Like, I know you guys have been on, like, you obviously on on the hallucinogenics and stuff like that. You have also done it. I haven't.
Not
So,
hallucinogenics.
Oh, no.
Hallucinations don't exist.
okay, so I've been titled that incorrectly, but you on
The medicine.
on medicine and stuff like that. Yes, like I'm not been on that. So
Okay.
when you mention terms like that, can you just like let me also know what is the what?
Psilocybin. So psilocybin
What
is
is
the
that?
active ingredients in magic mushrooms.
Oh, okay.
But I
Okay.
prefer to call it psilocybin because the magic mushrooms has got the party
The
stigma to it.
connotation to it, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I prefer to
Yeah.
because it is,
Yeah.
it's like anything else. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Yeah.
Psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it's interesting, our psilocybin is only one molecule different from DMT. It's
Whoa.
literally an alien DMT. Plus, scientists, they cannot find a relation between where the psilocybin cubensis mushroom evolved from in nature. They cannot find the link. So it's literally like it landed here on an asteroid, propagated itself.
How do you see ayahuasca seeing that it's a medicine? How do you see it being administered to the masses type of thing?
When
If that is
Yeah.
really what's needed.
I once saw a 12-year-old boy going to an ayahuasca ceremony.
Okay.
And they start really, really young there. Now they start with little doses, but they do start really young. And it's because they start young like that, but they create this entire culture around it. Like, you need to respect this plant. It's really powerful. It's loving. It will help you, but you need to respect it. And hence they create this setting of, you can take it, but this is the setting you do it in. In Peru, I mean, majority of people would never just take ayahuasca and go to a party. Even though if you just take a really little bit, you could probably party on it. but it's simply because the culture has instilled a respect for it.
Yeah.
You know, and this is something that we in Western culture are missing very, very much so. That's in olden cultures of olden days, when there was coming of age, you know, these different phases of our life that we go into, the morning of our life, afternoon of our life, the
Yeah.
evening in the life, so to describe. Between these different phases, there would be a psychedelic ceremony, in essence, that was given to the person. And this psychedelic ceremony would bring out the innate knowledge, experience, and wisdom that is stored inside that person from their previous lives that they need for this life.
Okay.
You see, and so this experience would be brought out systematically through a psychedelic ceremony so that this person would have everything brought out of them that they need for the next phase of their life. Nowadays, we don't do this anymore. Hence why you have a lot of people who are 40, 50 years old. They're still walking around with the same mindset of when they were 12 years old. Namely, they're trying to fit in with the crowd so they don't get bullied at school, basically. And they walk around with that their whole life.
But that also speaks
that,
into
the
the
Depop thing, the
but-
box.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that also
That's the
speaks
benefit.
then to the traumatic experiences or the trauma that basically lives with you. That's what I was just saying as well now, because if you only singing Kumbaya all the time, where your life is concerned, you're not looking at the things that need to be fixed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the depression, the anxieties, and all of that stuff stem from as well.
Yeah.
Because we're not willing to look at
Yeah.
the so-called dark side of ourselves.
But it's funny, like depression is not only caused by your aversions in terms of your traumas. See, in essence, we have attachments and we have aversions. These are the two main psychological barriers that we build for ourselves. But in essence, they're both the same thing. They both lead to suffering. Because if you have an attachment for something and this thing goes away, you suffer. If you have an aversion for something and this thing comes, you suffer. You see, so it's not just about addressing your aversions. It's even about addressing your attachments as well. Because both of them lead to suffering, which leads to depression.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to touch on like what you said just now as well. Is backtracking a bit about creatives becoming the ones that usually go into depression. Right? I haven't.
Not that they usually, I believe that most of humanity suffers from depression to certain degrees.
Okay.
It's just that when you have a 9 to 5 or you have something that's taking your mind off it.
You're distracted. You're
Yeah,
ignorant.
so you've been distracted for that time period of the day. It's not to say that people after their 9 to 5 they go home and they're not depressed, because a lot of them also then turn to their vices as well, because now my mind has not been occupied. I'm just saying that we then find that our 9 to 5 is the very thing that we're creating, and it's difficult to then hide away from it, because then depression shows up in your work, which is good, because it's good to maybe, like, if you're a poet or a lyricist, to write it out. But I'm just fine that you hear, like in the last couple of years, we've heard a lot of artists passing away because of maybe overdoses. Mac Miller, for instance. You have the Amy Winehouses, stuff like that.
Exactly. And I think why this is, I was talking about it this morning before I came here, that in essence in the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the Indian holy books, one of the Vedas, written, well, not written by Krishna, but it's Krishna that's speaking. He describes it as we all think that we are in control of our own actions, but actually we are always in one of three modes. It's either the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, or the mode of ignorance. And which mode we are in determines completely, automatically, the actions that we take, the thoughts we have, how we feel. Now, people that go to work every single day, right, and they just work this thing, they kind of shut their brain off because they don't really want to do it, but they got to do it, they're in the mode of ignorance. You see, when you're in the mode of ignorance, you may be depressed, but you're not aware of it because you're ignorant. Now, what are musicians? Creative people are passionate. See, so they're in the mode of passion. Simply because you're in the mode of passion, you're not in the mode of ignorance. And now, because you're not ignorant, you become aware of your depression. You see. But now the third mode is the mode of goodness. When you're in the mode of goodness, you're living from your heart, and you just love.
I think also
You just love, and it doesn't matter what you get back, because
isn't that also a point where you're more giving than the other two as well? Not to say that in the mode of passion that you're not giving, but
you are giving, but you want something in return.
yeah, it's more egotistical way with the way it sounds to me like the mode of goodness is you just give in without even worrying about what you're
Yeah,
going to receive.
exactly. And usually in their life, people will switch from one to the other.
Yeah.
Like people that go to work during the day, maybe in the mode of ignorance during the day. Now they come home and maybe they're suddenly with their wife who is completely loving. They slip into the mode of goodness. Now they go back to work in the mode of ignorance again.
Yeah.
Or they come home, they start making music. Now they're in the mode of passion for a
Yeah.
bit. But
Yeah, we're not always just in one mode.
no,
obviously.
but the key
Yeah.
in essence is to get to a point where you transcended all three of these modes. And the only way to get to that point is through the mode of goodness.
Yeah.
You see, because it's actually funny. I was speaking with her about this morning. That in the mode of ignorance, you're ignorant about what is to be done. You know,
Yeah.
you can't get very far. In the mode of passion, you're always looking for the next thing that's gonna awaken that passion inside of you. You're always looking for the next thing that excites you. So you're not still for long enough for what is meant for you to come to you. In the mode of goodness, you simply feel good. You simply feel good. So you're not chasing things down. You're not ignorant. You just have a still awareness. And because you're in one place in stillness, things can come to you by themselves. And when that comes, even this mode that is outside of these three modes can come to you. And that's how you then elevate above these three. And then in essence, you're in stillness. You're free.
There's just again backtracking as well. When you spoke about okay, firstly, thank you for that explanation, because that puts a lot of stuff into perspective. No pun intended again. Cha-ching. Yeah, I should actually, like, yeah. What I was going to say is, going back to when you were talking about the astral experience, and you mentioned that when, after telling your girlfriend that you're going to that you're going somewhere, and then you found yourself on this hospital bed, you were saying, and the what looked like the matrix with the codes and stuff like that. What do you feel about the notion that we live in a simulation? I don't know if you've ever heard of that. What do you think of that? Because now, like, if you think of it, like, we think that this is all that there is. Yes, we're talking about going to Mars, exploring Mars, putting people on Mars and stuff like that. The satellites that are shot out very far, that is mapping the universe and stuff like that, blah blah blah. But when the notion of multiverses, when the notion of there's more out there gets thrown around, people talk about it like it being pseudoscience, like, okay, you know what, it's not a real science, it can't be proved and stuff like that. But then you have people also saying that, but what if we live in a simulation? Like the Truman story, that movie with Jim Carrey?
Truman Show.
Yeah, Truman Show. So stuff like that. What do you think about that?
It is a similar. We are living in the shadow.
Okay.
Like, imagine that you put your hand over the table to cast a shadow. Now, physical reality is the shadow of the higher reality. See, and we often, when we work with things, it's like we try and change the shape of our hand, but instead we're like scrubbing at our shadow instead of simply changing the hand, and the shadow changes. And it's the way it is. In essence, to quickly put into perspective, let's say at the beginning, there was only one thing. There was only source, right? Now, there's nothing else for source to use to create anything except for itself.
Yeah.
All right? Some cultures say we were made out of sand, we were made out of this and that, but that wasn't there.
No.
So source could only make everything out of itself. Now, source knows it can create because it knows itself to be everything. So obviously it's creative too. But knowing is not enough. You need to be it. And to be it, you need to experience it. Yeah. Now, the only way for source to experience itself as being creative is to use itself to make a copy of itself so it can experience itself.
Yeah.
You see? Because if you are alone, there's no reference point. You see? So one can only be one as opposed to two.
Yeah.
Now, once it's done that, and it split itself up, made a copy of itself, that's in essence when you create a causal dimension. The causal dimension is a dimension that's right below source. Well, in terms of linguistical, language, just to be able to talk about it, you say it's below source. I suppose so, but I mean, all these things are just ego trying to summarize it, basically trying to compartmentalize it.
Yeah.
Now, one source has created a copy of itself. You have that causal plane, right? In the causal plane, source is a copy of itself, but it is still like indifferent to itself. right? So it is the same as itself. Now, once that happens, right, Source sees, look, I am now a copy of myself, but I'm still still, right? So I start vibrating. When a wave starts, what you get now is the etheric dimension, the energetic dimension, because energy is just movements, right? Now, once this has been created, Source says, okay, but now I am moving, right? So now let me give some direction to this movement, right? Hence you get the emotional plane, energy that is in motion
Okay.
in different directions. Once that dimension has been established by Source manifesting itself down all of these dimensions, it now creates the mental plane, right? Because it starts to organize this energy that is in motion into specific patterns, right? So the mental plane is formed. Together, the emotional and mental plane together form the astral plane. See, because the astral plane is in essence the blueprints for the physical plane, which has been created from the total sum of all the dimensions above it.
Okay.
All right? And the astral plane, in terms, forms this. You see, which is why if you go and meditate, you end up on the astral plane, you will get the experience of this feels more real than the physical plane.
Oh.
Right? If from the astral plane you go to the mental plane, where there is no form, it's just thoughts, just feelings, then you will experience, hey, this even feels more real than the astral plane. Of course, because any form is not you. It's a form that has been created to represent the aspect of Source.
Mhm.
You see? So the more and more you go into these higher dimensions where there's less and less shape, the more real you experience it as, because you're closer to Source, which is a state of not having a shape. See, so on this dimension,
Dropping bombs.
so that's why on this physical dimension, it is a simulation.
Yeah.
And it is real from this point of view.
Yeah.
But when you're on a higher point of view, that point of view is
It's an illusion.
realer.
This is an illusion.
Well, not an illusion. It's also real, but it's also fake. Just depends where you're looking from.
Where you're looking from, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like on one level, you are this body because you created it. But on a deeper level, you are not this body because you're
Yeah.
something else that's steering this.
So then the notion, like you I would always hear online when people talk about simulated reality and stuff like that, or simulations, like they will always make it seem like there's somebody out there controlling the simulation. But the more I'm listening to your point of view now, or your breakdown, I'm starting to think now, and I've been thinking about this for a while now. What if it is just you controlling the simulation? Because perception has a lot to do with our with this reality as well. With this paradigm, is basically based on our perception of how we see things. So if we can change the perception, we can then change the simulation to a certain degree. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, completely. Completely. In essence, picture like an Excel spreadsheet, right? We both know Excel.
Yeah.
Picture an Excel spreadsheet. And now all the way in the top left corner, you have cell 1A, right? Now in cell 1A, you put a certain formula, right? Now you continue compiling the rest of your Excel spreadsheets, but all of the formulas you compile reference to cell 1A, you see? So your entire spreadsheet is dependent on what is in cell 1A, right? If you would break this formula in cell 1A, the entire spreadsheet would break, you see? Cell 1A is in essence the first ego belief that you come to learn as a baby, namely, I am this, that is that, right? Separate from self. Now imagine something were to happen to break this belief on which all other beliefs are formed. Everything would fall away.
Yeah.
Suddenly, everything falls away and the simulation is gone. At least this simulation. See, because how we reference to the outside world is in direct correlation with how we reference to ourselves.
Definitely.
So you change this one thing and everything goes poof.
It's like you also said earlier on. You're not necessarily seen with the eye. Like I always say, the the camera lens is basically a manifestation or a creation of, and it's based on the eye. Because we're not necessarily seen with the eye. We're capturing light and our consciousness, or our inner eye, so to say, is then basically that image gets stored on there, and then we playing out our reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused because my thoughts on the
Same with the camera as well. That's what I wanted to say. Camera catches the light, and then that's how you get a photo. It's not like, yeah.
You
So
don't
if
see
you
light,
turn,
you
if
see
you
the
turn the light
photo.
down, then there's no picture, obviously.
Yeah.
my idea with the simulation thing is the idea of it is that this reality is a computer. I think in the 40s they discovered some in science. It was computer code in reality, in the
Yeah.
fabrics of reality. So when I think about
Simulation.
simulations, I think of computer. I've never thought about it that way.
But that's how I also, when I started getting onto the whole simulation thing, or reality has been a simulation, that's where I also started thinking, because I was like, but then when the code you're talking about is like, for instance, when you're looking at the what's the spiral of the bottom of the
Fibonacci,
shell,
no?
Or the
Fibonacci
Fibonacci.
equation, and then I think is it the Vesica Pisces? Is that the two circles?
Pisces, yeah, symbolization of Jesus.
Yes, but that lends itself to that explanation that you were saying of the source being one and the source had to split itself.
Yes.
So that's the representation of it, the Vesica Pisces.
Yeah.
So if you look at those, you see all of those. It's basically code. So you see it almost everywhere in nature. But then I started to think to myself, like, you know what? That's maybe the layman's understanding of it. Like, they liken it to computer code, but it's not necessarily maybe that. Maybe even the computer and the way computer code is constructed, maybe that's just a manifestation of the bigger picture, actually. You know, like the camera is a manifestation of the eye, so
Yeah.
forth. Yeah.
Yeah. Because indeed it does have a very digital feel to it. I've also been in lots of spaces where I see this code everywhere, and the first thing that strikes me is this all feels really, really digital. You know, so I can relate to that, but I don't know, I may be wrong, but I don't think there's some guy sitting in Area 51 with a giant machine creating this reality, you know? I don't think so.
I've gone to this Facebook thingy where they talk about DMT, and there's one story struck me where this guy said, "Guys, I was going through this channels, whatever, and I was almost at the place where they broadcast this reality from, and I don't know, for some reason that just like, dude, what is DMT, dude? Like, if you can." If you got stories like that, man, you know what I'm saying? It really intrigues me, dude.
I think we also live in the age where everybody wants answers, man. You know, back in the day, you had to go to the library, or you had to go to an encyclopedia, or you had to go, or it was word of mouth. You know how information got exchanged. Now everybody, it's like pick up your phone, whatever, you know, and there it is. The information is there, and I think we're living at a time now where everybody wants to know the answers to their deepest thoughts. And then you get people as well, not to say like that guy was like going off his like, okay, whatever, but you do get people that I feel that try to sway the masses off the course as well, like so that you, and again, I think it's also open as down to the interpretation as well, because they might feel that like that is the truth, you know, because I mean at the end of the day I always say like there's your truth, my truth, and then the universal truth. It's always three, you know. It's
Yeah. It's in essence, where are they operating from?
yeah.
You know, somebody who's operating from the sacral chakra will be all about generating money, being safe, being stable in life, you know, where somebody who's working from the heart chakra, it's like everything can be taken away and you'll still feel love.
And that's actually, I was going to ask you earlier on when you mentioned the chakras as well. Is it possible to resonate from different points as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, even just to give an example, this is not, it's related to the chakras, but it's not about the chakras directly. You have in your system, in terms of yoga terms, you have the spine, right, which is just the Sushumna. Then on the left side, you have one nervous column, which is the Ida. On the right side, you have the Pingala, right? Ida is connected to left nostril. Pingala connected to right nostril. Ida is the feminine side. The Pingala is the masculine side, right? So feminine is creativity, masculine is logic. And if you are aware of yourself during the day, you'll see when you're busy doing creative things, you usually breathe in more through your left. If you're busy doing logical things, you breathe in more through your right. because it's your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system that are taking an energy for the task that needs to happen.
I need to sort out my sinus. Yeah, no, that's dope. That's dope.
You know, and this is why literally every single thing in your life is dependent on your own system. In essence, we are be given these vehicles, and the people that are the best mechanics make the most of their lives.
Yeah, that drop that bomb. That's definitely, definitely.
And that's how it is. Yogis are just mechanics that are working on perfecting this system that they have been blessed with, that they have incarnated into.
That's deep. That's actually really deep.
Yeah.
That's deep.
We also had a discussion on Facebook about float tanks.
Did you try it?
I tried it out,
How was it?
dude. I did the first one was there was a special for 3 sessions. The first one was I didn't realize how my body is not at rest after I did it, because the first 20 minutes I thought I was at rest, and then I would just relax my lips. Oh fuck, I wasn't relaxed. Oh fuck, really I wasn't. And then I settled in, and I realized what my body's never at a state of relaxation.
Yeah.
And I stretched myself out, and my whole spine would just crack.
Nice.
That was the best thing. that was for 45 minutes, and then I took my next one 2 45 minutes together,
Okay.
and that was more of a dude. It was yeah. It wasn't a physical, because some people say the see stuff whatever, because the data in your mind just goes. It was more like it's just me and myself, and I had to sort out some stuff with myself, and yeah, it was actually emotional experience at parts where I just had to face myself. But I normally face myself, but that for me was just your body, just your mind actually just, it doesn't have to worry about that sound and worry about my bum is on the seat now. Just there's nothing. It's just you and yourself, just your soul. That was a that good experience. I actually want to build.
Amazing.
I actually want to build a float tank at home,
Okay.
because the one that I was in is, I think it's about 300,000.
It's quite a lot, yeah.
Quite a lot, yeah. But I'm
Yeah.
thinking about like constructing my own one.
I want to touch on what you were saying about the fact that you have muscular strain, right? Constantly. There's a very interesting lecture by Alan Watts, and he explains it as that's as above, so below, right? So when you manifest ego manifests itself in your physical constitution as chronic muscular strain. This is why you see, you put somebody on the floor, you tell them relax. They won't be relaxed. You know, they'll be like straining something without even realizing it. And the more you relax, the more ego goes away, because the chronic muscular strain goes away. See, hence why working with your body to perfect yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, psychically is in essence the ideal framework to work with. Because when your body is completely relaxed, completely healthy, completely open, then ego is at bay.
So you're referring to yoga?
Yes, but yoga is a term that many people misunderstand. I mean, yoga basically just means unity. You see, so anything that brings you in a unity of mind, body, spirit, total unity. And this is not just being on the ground and doing asanas, yoga poses. I mean, for me, it's a process that keeps going the entire day. That every single thing I do, I try to do it with awareness. I try to do it from my center, from my heart. Focus on my breathing the whole day. Whenever my breathing goes out of whack, focus, bring myself back to my center. So yoga is a constant journey, 24/7. You know, through just you teaching yourself to live life in as relaxed of a way as possible. And this includes everything. I mean, like dishwashing could be a yoga, you know?
So I'm going to say a smile is the best yoga pose.
Yeah.
What are we at on time?
We are now at that time where we usually are, 1 hour 40 minutes, 38 seconds, 38 minutes basically, 1 hour 38 minutes.
Wonderful. Hasn't felt that long, eh?
No, it hasn't. Like I could go on. like I was going to mention also, like when you were mentioning about where you've lived, like in the beginning, and I was going to say like, yo, most they've got nothing on you, traveling man. He's got nothing on
Well, at
you.
least most have got an illegal world passport. I never got one of those.
um, do you think like is sleep paralysis closely related to astral projection?
hmm Sleep paralysis is basically just your body making yourself lay still so you don't roll off your bed when you're sleeping. That's basically it, you
Yeah.
know? And when you are in that relaxed state, I mean, relaxation is the first step to everything.
I also heard about you were speaking about the chakras earlier on and about cleansing the body and stuff like that as well. Somebody was speaking once. I listened also to something where this guy was talking about how um, the trying to move the energies through the chakra points or the Kundalini basically, and how people have this misconception that it is sometimes that it's an easy thing. But he then discovered as well that maybe because his body wasn't cleansed properly, maybe because he could have maybe not been relaxed. Um, he even went as far as saying as maybe because the way the body is not perfectly straight or whatever, that the Kundalini energy rising up was not as quote unquote peaceful as he thought it was going to be.
Well, it is me. Sometimes I can feel like your neck is breaking.
Oh,
You know, it doesn't always feel peaceful. Definitely not.
okay. Have you gone through that, experienced that before?
Yeah, the story that I told you at the start,
Oh, yes, with the
yeah, that is in essence what started my entire journey. After that, something awoken up in me, and my rest of my life was different. Yeah.
yeah, like when you came in here, I said like when I met you, you were still psychiatrics. It was not as it is now.
Yeah.
Just all.
Yeah, and you weren't the taller. You seem much
Yeah, you
taller.
see, no. When I met him, you was tall. You were
Nice.
like, oh, I'm
Much
just
more
short.
like a I don't know.
Like you got stretched out a little bit.
You're stretched out.
Yeah, I mean, when I met you then and your evolution to now, it's like almost yin and yang.
Yeah, Kundalini changes everything, man. It really changes everything. A lot of people don't know they have this in them, you know? They don't know they have this massive reservoir of energy right at the bottom of themselves, which, if they awaken it, can literally make them superhuman. No, for example, like Napoleon, right? Napoleon went to go sleep in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, had a Kundalini awakening, and look what he went to go do. You know, basically went to try rule the world.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and it's just so much intelligence, clarity, energy comes out of Kundalini. I mean, Kundalini is literally the energy that shapes you in the womb. So once you awaken it later through your life, Kundalini knows exactly what the blueprint of your body is, how it should be.
It makes sense because I mean the womb is that close to the base of
Yeah,
your spine.
source. Yeah. Yeah, that's also a good point. Yes, this is
Yeah.
true.
There's a book that I read. Contemplating reading it again because sometimes you skip things the first time you read a book. But it's also because I've been put onto a lot of Neville Goddard stuff now of late. I'm not sure if you well versed with Neville Goddard. Anyway, he's of the mindset that when you talk about the source and us or one, he's saying that the the notion of God is actually our imagination. That we, with our imagination, create everything that we see. So he talks about because he in his deciphering he breaks down the Bible basically. So he will break down the word the name God. He'll break down what Moses means, blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, was the point basically what he's saying is that the term I am or the masculine and feminine is what everything is created from. So you always start with I am, and then you continue your manifestation. So if you were to say like I am happy, you have to like kind of also then, without just saying it, you have to also then believe it and feel it. Because a lot of times when people think about the sense of the sense of touch or feeling, we're looking at the physical touch, not also realizing that we feel within as well. So you have to put yourself in that.
Yeah.
That imagine that picture, put yourself in the picture, have the feeling and everything, and then the imagination or the source can't help but just reflect that back to you, because you're asking the source that, because as he says in the Bible, not that I'm a religious person, but I'm just like obviously now quoting what he says in the Bible. People always ask like, who is God? And he answers, he says, I am who I am. So he's already saying who he is. He's saying he's the I am. So that's where he then likens that to your imagination. But then it took me to this book that I read quite a while ago called God, Man, the Word Made Flesh by George W. Carey. I actually thought when Jim Carrey had his awakening, so to say, that like maybe he's related to this guy that put out this book in 1919, and he basically talks about this energy that's born at the base of your spine, and there's 33 vertebrae within your spine, and this energy releases an oil substance that moves up the spine, and that oil, like Christ basically means the anointed or anointing, so that oil is anointing, and he talks about that being Jesus moving up the 33 basically, as in the Bible, he lived for 33 years. So he's moving up the spine, gets to the point where the neck is. Talks about you have like when Jesus was crucified, there was two crucified next to him. So then that representation is also there. There's a point in your brain where there's 144,000 nerve endings. That's like
Actually, your whole, you have 144,000 meridian points in your whole body.
So that's the talk about the 144,000 that will make it to heaven in the Revelations. He breaks that down, and it has to travel all the way until the third eye, basically, to the what's the term now? You have done there.
The gland.
Yeah, the pineal gland. So that's travel to that, and then you become awakened. But that journey can stop with various things. So it can be what you consume. It can be even your thought patterns. So he's talking along the line of like, if you constantly in your carnal thoughts, like sex is on your mind all the time, and not the purification, the perverted part of it, that can stop that journey as well. And it basically takes 3 days. It happens on a regular basis every single month. So what you were talking about, like
What happens every single month?
The seed being born and traveling up,
Okay.
but because we don't pay attention to it, because man, or in general, like nobody knows about it. Like, I mean, I've read the book, but I haven't put it to the test yet. So because we're not doing the experiment as well, we don't know that we can't prove that it can work and that it does happen. But so even with us not knowing, we like in an ignorant state, that seed might not even have the ability to travel for an hour after it gets born at that specific time of the month. You see, but he's basically saying that. So when you mention that, like, man doesn't know the power that lays at his base to become a superhuman, that made me think of that analogy, or as I say, the Bible is allegory. So
But every single tradition, religion, and culture around the world
refers to
speaks
something
about
like that.
Kundalini,
Exactly.
because we intuitively know that Kundalini is the next step in human evolution. No, I mean, we look around ourselves and we compare ourselves to the other animals physically, and we say like, look, we have reached our epic, because we cannot see how we can physically evolve further.
Yeah.
But that's because we are not supposed to physically evolve further. We're supposed to energetically and consciously evolve further. And this, every single culture, every single religion, every single tradition knows, because I talk about this. Like, spoke about the Bible. For example, the Bible is also Jacob's ladder. Jacob passes out, he sees a ladder, he says angels moving up and down the ladder. I mean, he had a Kundalini experience, passed out, and he saw energy move up and down his spine. Or if you look at, for example, the Quran, I mean, at some point, Archangel Gabriel comes to visit Muhammad with this being called a Burak, right? Now, the Burak is an animal. It basically has the body of a lion, then it has the wings of an eagle and the head of a woman, right? And Muhammad hops on this Burak Archangel Gabriel goes with him, and they go and start a journey up the 7 heavens, the 7 chakras, right? At the final chakra, Gabriel says to Muhammad, look, I can't come with you. No, you have to travel alone on the Burak. So Muhammad travels alone to the top chakra, to the top heaven. In this top heaven, he finds a tree which has all the colors of the rainbow.
It's just now the chakras still further above.
No, this is the 7th chakra, the
seventh
crown
one,
chakra.
okay.
Also in yoga, the crown chakra is illustrated as having all the colors of the rainbow.
Yes.
You know, so even this whole story in the Quran is less about Kundalini traveling up, in this case, in Muhammad.
Yeah.
Even in Freemasonry, where they have the tracing board that they walk around when they do the ceremonies, you know, it's all 3 pillars and a ladder, 33 steps standing up against the middle pillar.
Yeah. It's funny you bring Freemasonry into Freemasonry into it, because I mean that gets vilified so like in mainstream like religion, so to say.
Yeah.
But like I've done like a lot of digging into that as well, and again it's basically telling the same story. It's a lot of metaphorical pictures that is trying to basically, to in a nutshell, explain man's existence and where man needs to go next. It's like that simple.
Yeah. And even Freemasonry, I mean, like a lot of people imply that when you awaken Kundalini, you automatically become a loving person, you become a saint. It's not true. I mean, this is simply energy, it's awareness, and it can be used for whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it can be used for good ends, can be used for bad ends, if you look at it from a dualistic perspective on this dimension.
Yeah.
But with that said, even though in Freemasonry there's a lot that try to use it for negative purposes, right? In essence, Freemasonry is simply the catalyst that we need in order to grow, because you always need resistance. I mean, if you were trying to drive from here to Cape Town and there was no road giving you resistance, you'd be there instantly.
Yeah.
You see? So in order for this game, this dance of life to take place, there always has to be a resistance against the light.
Yeah.
In order for a dance to take part. So if every single thing would be pure, would be good, would be love, we would all be enlightened, we would snap and all of this would be gone.
Yeah.
Because there would be no purpose for it. There would be no dance.
And I think that speaks also then to the source being the creator of everything, but having to experience it itself. And because it split itself and made a copy of itself, there is already at that point a dualistic view.
Yeah.
So I always I'm telling my sons now, I'm trying to lack of a better term, program them a little bit different than I was programmed growing up. And I'm trying to tell them that, you know what, at the end of the day, there's only choices. It's your choice. Because basically a killer and his perception of the reality, to him that might be good. To you it's bad, but yeah. you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It's basically like at the end of the day, it comes down to choices. But with Freemasonry, there's the one thing that I've also found out is that when you come into the lodge, I think it's on your left-hand side, they say that there's a rough ashlar, so that's what they call the ashlar, and the smooth ashlar on the right-hand side.
What's the ashlar?
It's like let's just liken it to a piece of like, let's say a rock or something that needs to be molded. So this one is rough and this one is smooth, and that's basically the depiction of man's journey. You come into the lodge as something that needs to be worked on, and you need to leave the lodge as you've now polished yourself off, being like, you know, and yeah, like you that lends itself to that notion of like there has to be that resistance. You can't just, I mean even like you said, in our life we have the morning, the afternoon, the evening. You can't learn everything in the morning. You know, it's like you have to go through there's reasons why you discover certain things at certain points in your life. If everything was just given to you and it was a smooth ride, well then what's it to learn?
Yeah. And even then, it cannot all be given in you. Because let's say, like, if you start as a teenager and you say, I want as much of everything as possible. I want abundance in everything, right? I mean, then what's like abundance in riches, abundance in poverty? abundance in lessons that you can only learn if you don't have riches and don't have poverty, or like abundance in what? And this is also what you were saying earlier about manifestation, in terms that you say I am, and you focus and you picture yourself in that exact scenario in order to manifest it, right? This, I used to do this, but I've completely stopped. Because in essence, you are then manifesting from a place of ego. See, because you think to yourself, I want this, I need this, I am supposed to be this. So you say, I am, I have, I do, whatever. But then the life that you create for yourself, you have no idea if that's really why you came here. You know, I mean, you've been, like Buddha likens it to this, right? If you have a mountain and you have a dove, and this dove takes a scarf, and this dove keeps flying circles, running this scarf along the tip of the mountain. The amount of time it would take for this scarf to wear down this mountain is the amount of time you've been working on enlightenment.
Yeah.
So now imagine you've been through all these lives already, and yet you chose to come back for a specific reason. There was some desire you had to fulfill here, right? Now, most people have no idea what this is, their reason for incarnating and their reason for coming back, and yet they are trying to create a life based on manifestations that they believe they want to become true, but they have no idea. See, it's almost like there's this giant ocean of water. We have this little hole in the ground. All we need to do to fill up this hole is dig a trench between our hole and this ocean. And yet we go drilling for water here, drilling here, drilling here, drilling here, drilling here. So we spent all our life drilling, trying to find water, instead of just connecting with the source of everything, which in this case is God, Krishna, Vishnu, Yahweh, Jehovah,
Whichever
you know,
term.
whatever you may call it, yeah. But if you align yourself fully with the Most High, and you have this quality of openness, humility, and being able to receive, everything you need flows to you. You don't need to manifest it, because it just happens automatically.
So in the first clip you mentioned that like you're waiting for the one to speak to the one. Like for anybody that's listening to this now or watching this, like how would you then, like if you could give them like the easiest method to to have that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, like how would you go about it?
Well, the easiest method is the most difficult one. I mean, the easiest method is what they will call Satori. Satori is a sudden enlightenment. Satori means that suddenly all your beliefs fall away, all your aversions, all your attachments suddenly fall away in this moment that hits you at once, completely unexpectedly, completely unprepared. Boom, boom, you're enlightened. Right? But this is the thing, like, how do you bring this about? Nobody knows, because it happens to people by chance. Hence why I say the easiest way is the most difficult way, because this is the way of it happening the fastest, but nobody knows how to have it happen. It just happens, you know, because it's kind of like you have to surprise yourself. But how do you do this? How do you plan to surprise yourself? You cannot. And yet that's the only way for sudden enlightenment to happen. So hence the easiest path is the most difficult path, right? But the path which for me makes the most sense is follow your intuition. And your intuition will guide you to every single thing, you know, whether it's psychedelic medicine, whether it's Vipassana meditation, whether it's Kriya Yoga, whether it's Ashtanga, whether it's good diets, whether it's Bhakti Yoga, like whatever it may be. Like for me, the path I found that really works for me is Bhakti Yoga. And Bhakti Yoga is in essence singing devotional songs to God, right? And by doing this, you are in essence making love with God until you melt into God. And then you become one with him. And I never knew about this, man. But I mean, being a musician, it's the perfect way to become one with God.
Exactly.
You know, Bhakti Yoga. So there's many, many different paths. And I cannot say like do this path or do that path, because it's different for each single person, you know. But that's why you simply need to explore and listen to your intuition and go with it, man.
I think I'm asking this for myself as well, but I'm just going to ask it as well for any people out there. But like with the psychedelics, for instance, if you have certain issues that you're aware of, like they say depression or anxiety or you've been abused or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Would you suggest people do certain psychedelics, or if they, um, or should there maybe be some cleansing beforehand? What would you
I think
suggest?
cleansing should always be part of it.
Okay.
Always. Because, I mean, it doesn't. I mean, if you can clean yourself, why have a psychedelic do it for you? You know, rather clean yourself, then take the psychedelic, and the psychedelic can work with a clean system. It can do its thing. You know, this is why so many people get sick on ayahuasca the first bunch of times, because their system is not ready to transcend. See, so they need to be cleaned out so they can be in a state where it can happen. But this is the same thing with mushrooms, though. No, I mean, mushrooms, like for me, man, mushrooms always at the start, they make me sick. No, they make me vomit. It's like there's something that needs to adjust. And then once I'm adjusted and I'm in that state, then everything goes fine.
Okay.
And in essence, all psychedelics work like this. So, I mean, cleansing, I would definitely recommend. But more importantly than just cleansing is trust. If there is no trust, then there's fear. You know, so if you go and work with psychedelics, either you need to trust completely in the psychedelic that you're using. Like, for example, people that work with ayahuasca, they work purely with ayahuasca. They have a trust relationship with ayahuasca. And what she says goes. They know they will end up all right at the other end. You know, even if their shit comes up, they know they'll be all right because they have trust.
Yeah.
You know, some other people trust in the guru, you know, or you can trust in yourself. But the thing is, if you trust in yourself, I mean, you yourself are imperfect. So in essence, you're not trustworthy.
Ah. Do you want to drop a bomb for that one?
Because, I mean, you yourself don't have perfect awareness. So you are not sure, am I really making the right choice?
Yeah.
You have no idea.
You're always living in some sort of doubt.
Yeah. In essence. And we go through this whole process trying to analyze, like, what decision should I make? But when it's finally time to make the decision, we make it on a whim. It's always how it is.
Can I ask you? So we've been discussing natural psychedelics, right? What is your relationship with man-made psychedelics like LSD and stuff like that? Do you recognize it? How do you see the connection with the two?
Man, I've had LSD probably like 300-400 times. So, but how I find the difference very much so. I mean, LSD, by the way, comes from it's lysergic acid, right? It comes from the ergot fungus. That's how they initially found it, and they in essence created a synthesized version of this. And the funny story behind it is, back in the days of the Middle Ages, people would grow their wheat out in the fields. Ergot fungus would start to grow on it, but if they had a bad harvest, they would still eat the wheats. So they would start to trip because of the ergot fungus, which contains the lysergic acid. And they would blame the witches for putting spells on them, and they would start to hunt down witches.
Okay.
But so, yeah,
So
just
you
a
do
bit of
get
a...
natural LSD as well.
Yes, but this natural LSD can give you a whole bunch of other side effects if you have the ergot fungus, you know, so don't use that, please. But the LSD that has then been synthesized from it, this is where I also used to be in a space between everything that comes from nature is good, everything that comes from man is bad, right? But this, in essence, is... it's not the case. It's just about, does it serve you? Does it not serve you?
Yeah.
One thing that I find with LSD very much is because there's no consciousness involved. When you take it, it's just you dealing with your own consciousness. You see, whereas with a mushroom, it's the mushroom's consciousness involved that's guiding you, trying to steer you. With ayahuasca, it's the consciousness of ayahuasca. Whereas with LSD, it's just you.
Okay.
You know, which means that...
So then your bullshit can come to the fore more often.
Not more often or better, or it's just different.
Oh.
It's just different. Like for me, with LSD, I can sit, I can meditate, and I can kind of guide the work, right? Whereas with mushrooms, so ayahuasca, I just need to relax, surrender, go with it.
I get it.
Right? But this is also interesting, though. Like some things that I have tried, for instance, is LSD with mushrooms together, or like LSD with ayahuasca together. And this is interesting because you end up being in this super high state of awareness because of the LSD. And then this consciousness enters your system. And because you're in a super high state of awareness, you can literally observe this consciousness that is doing its work in you in an incredibly high level. Even so much so, first time I tried this is I had LSD. I was standing in the sun doing Tai Chi, and something told me, go inside, just have one drop of ayahuasca. You know, usually it only starts to have effects, well, with the one that I have, maybe after like 20, 30 milliliters, right? But this time I had just one drop. Like not even 1 milliliter. And I had this one drop whilst in this LSD state. I felt something in my head go cook, and suddenly communication started. Communication with the other side, you know, knowledge being fed through, experience being fed through, wisdom being given, just by this one little drop. See, so it's really interesting that when you first get yourself in a state where you're super open, super receptive, and super aware, that you need a lot less of something to work with it. And this, I think, is where LSD is. It's amazing, man. It's amazing, yeah. Yeah. If either of you ever had LSD?
No. Like I've said, I'm.
Okay.
You guys are the.
I've had it a couple of years ago, yeah.
Okay.
But it was more physical thing, more visual experience than the inwards experience. Where the psilocybin was an inward. I mean, I haven't done it in a while. Psilocybin, probably a year, 2 years ago, say a year and a half. But it was more like I remember the one time using it. I just have a sense of you're doing okay, man. You don't be so hard on yourself, man.
Yeah.
Just do what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But you're doing okay. But be conscious. Don't be too heavy on yourself. But be on yourself. Don't just think I've made it.
Yeah.
I don't have to care about this. I don't have to care about that type of thing.
Yeah.
That was the one. The other one was in the yard. So the background is the flay basically, and a couple of my buddies were chilling, and storm was coming in, and everybody was just looking at the storm, and I just realized how we all just part of this ecosystem. And I can't really explain it. I just felt the sense of connectedness and oneness with Earth itself. That's my experience.
Yeah. Indeed, I've also often had that. Yeah. It's the funny thing is what you now said, that LSD is much more visual, much more physical. I think the shrooms do it for you. They guide you to whatever you're supposed to have. Whereas for the LSD, it's like you have a giant flashlight in your hands, but you need to decide where to point it. You see. So it won't automatically take you in. You can go out and explore the world, or you can just sit quietly, meditate, and turn it inward. Yeah.
And the great thing about shrooms is, or psilocybin is, I have no desire to take it now, because I know for a fact there's nothing that I need right now to fix type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not. People would say, yeah, it's addictive and stuff like that, but it's not really. I think we have to make it clear that the podcast is not promoting psychedelics in any way, shape, or form.
I think we just had an interest to have Laszlo on. I think that's where it stems from. We both have we've had an interaction with you before, and I think that's the reason why we have you on. And your journey is not necessarily to promote anything.
Yeah, because if you think about it, the psychedelic conversation was just probably 40%, where the knowledge was the main.
Yeah.
And I honestly, to be honest with you, I never knew that I'm gonna have this experience, because dude, you're pretty deep, dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say also, like you guys have been onto the psychedelics and stuff like that. Like the furthest, the hardest I went was like just dope, just smoking, marijuana. That's basically it.
Dude,
But
even dope, man. I once had a full moon marijuana ceremony after not smoking for like 2-3 months or so. You smoke marijuana in a certain way at a certain time on a full moon after your body is clean. It's wow.
That's another level.
It's a psychedelic trip. Yeah.
Okay. So keep that in mind. But I've always been of the notion of like, and I think it's also maybe the information that I've been consuming, where the view is basically that your brain, or your brain can basically secrete all of these chemicals that the drugs would put you on.
Mm-hmm.
A blanket term now, drugs would
Mm-hmm.
put you on. So you can create that. So I've been of the notion of like, you know what? Why do I need something if I can do it myself? And that's the reason probably why I've stayed away for so long
Yeah.
of, not wanting to try stuff. But then also, um, I'm not gonna lie to you, the ayahuasca experience has kind of been like something that has, piqued my interest and intrigued me.
Mm.
When you told me about the floating tanks, well, okay, that's not ingesting anything, but I was like, okay, that sounds cool. So I'm now starting to open myself up to like, you know what?
Mm.
Maybe like he was telling me like, yeah, we must do some shrooms. So I was like, but that was like, I'm
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that I'm kind of like opening up to that now.
Mm.
Um,
It's because what you say is true. I mean, we cannot get it within ourselves. I mean, we have an endocannabinoid system because internally we're supposed to produce our own cannabinoids. Hence why the
Exactly.
gurus look constantly stoned, whereas they don't smoke. Because they know
Okay.
how to produce this internally.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. Like a monk, for instance, if you go and sit in pitch black, right, for 40 days, then your melatonin production will go down and your dimethyltryptamine production will automatically go up. See, so you can do it by yourself. But in this day and age, who is going to go sit in pure darkness for 40
Exactly.
days and organize for somebody to come feed them once a day when it's dark outside as well, so no light comes in? Like, who's going to do that? You know? And then after those 40 days, you have a mystical experience, you have a revelation. Okay, something in your brain has changed because you've had DMT in there. Then you leave the cave and you may meditate on and go about your life. Whereas you can also simply smoke some DMT, smoke some changa. You have the revelation, the state change in your brain still occurs, but you
Yeah.
don't have to spend 40 days.
Yeah.
And I feel this is in essence a huge, huge blessing of Mother Nature. Because Mother Nature is trying to heal herself through us by providing us with these medicine because she knows there is no time.
Yeah.
See, so she's giving us what we need to hurry up the process.
Yeah, I think that also even leads us to the previous episode that we had. At the end of the day, you have to treat the female properly. Female energy is basically where it's
Yeah.
at.
Females are the solution to everything, man. The issue is actually females supposed to live from the heart naturally, right?
Yeah.
Now imagine if all females in the world said to all men, listen, we're not going to become sexual and drop to our lower chakras for you. We're going to stay in our heart and you must meet us here. Then all the men would be forced to live from the heart. You see? But instead, we live in a culture that promotes sexuality to a point that even the women have left their heart and go to the sexuality, whereas the heart is the answer to everything.
Yeah, our previous episode was based on the gender-based violence. Yeah, so that then we were talking about like how important women are. So I mean, just speaking now, like I mean, even Mother Nature understands like what needs to be done.
Yeah.
You know what fascinates me is how did they know to mix in Peru or Amazon to mix the one plant with the other plant to make ayahuasca? That for me is like because they
Oh,
know.
wait. So you're telling me it's not one plant?
No, it's
Uh-uh.
two. It's two. Apparently, yeah, it's two.
Well, it's at least two. Yeah.
So how did they know? Because I mean, they know they've got no.
Experimentation.
Nuh-uh. Because chacruna grows on the ground.
Okay.
Banisteriopsis capi vine grows 20 to 30 meters high up in the trees.
Damn.
See, chacruna takes a few months to grow. The Banisteriopsis capi vine takes about 20 years.
Okay.
So it's highly unlikely that they would have taken this and climbed up all the
There
way
had to
and
be
combined the two.
some form of a source.
Yeah.
Yeah,
tell them to-
there's an anthropologist. Don't know his full name. First name is Jeremy, but he wrote a book called The Origins of Knowledge, right? And this guy, when ayahuasca first started coming into the Western limelight, he traveled to the Amazon to go talk with these people. Like, how do you know? And they told him, nature told us. The plants told us how to work with the plants, right? And all these anthropologists were dumbstruck. Like, the plants told you how to work with the plants. Like, right. And then they were trying to puzzle it out until one of the team of anthropologists said to this Jeremy guy, like, look, brother Jeremy, if you want to know, you just have to try it out. You have to experience it. And so he did. And that's how we learned, like, this is how they know that nature teaches.
This was dope.
I think we can,
I think we need to have Laszlo back again.
dude.
For sure,
Because
be
there's a
an
lot
honor,
to talk
man.
I would
about.
definitely want to back, dude. I just want to say thank you, dude, because I honestly I didn't know it was going to be this deep, dude.
Yeah.
I didn't know the gems that you were going to drop were going to be this valuable, dude. Thanks
Well,
a
I
lot.
appreciate your time, man, and your time perspective.
No problem. Like, thank you. Yeah, definitely thank you. So yeah, are we calling it? We done now?
Mm-hmm.
So yep, to the viewers out there, Shaq always says like, like, subscribe, yeah, this corner, that corner, whatever on your screen. This is our first guest of many. We're gonna have quite a lot. And the content will be coming out on a more regular basis as well. This is one is probably the longest episode we've had. If you're still listening, thank you for your attention. Thank you again to Laszlo. And yeah, this is the Babbling Heads, episode 7. We out. Peace.
Peace out.